everyone, and welcome to The Hash, where we bring you the latest and greatest in crypto and culture. My name is Naomi Brockwell, and today on the show we have the usual crew. We have Jen Sanasi, Will Foxley, Zach Seward. Welcome, guys, and let's dive into our first story. So I'm going to throw this straight to you, Zach.
It is Diem Death Knell week, and one of the things that I think is particularly interesting about it is that David Marcus, he announced this in November. He said, hey, I'm leaving Meta. I've been here for a while. I was in charge of Novi, the digital wallet subsidiary of Meta, and I'm stepping down at the end of the year. So end of the year comes, it happens. All this news comes out about Diem basically being wound down, some of those assets sold to Silvergate Bank. And now the news that we're talking about today is a pair of tweets from David Marcus that I found really interesting. I'll read them to you just for, oh, there it is. There it is. There it is. It's become clear to me
still read
that
them to
Bitcoin
us.
will be the one asset and L1 still around in 20 plus years. So this is interesting because now we have David Marcus, who was helming the Libra effort from launch. He became the face of the Libra hearings on Capitol Hill. He was put through the ringer. And if anyone is qualified to comment on the value of censorship-resistant money, it may indeed be him. And we see him doing that in a pair of tweets yesterday. So I'm really interested in where this guy is going to land next. David Marcus, he was formerly of PayPal. He's sort of a fintech legend. And he seems to be continuing his journey down the crypto rabbit hole. And I'm very curious to see where he's going to go now that he is out of Novi and of Facebook land. So this is about that. A lot of interesting ideas in this pair of tweets, but also just I think a lot of questions are swirling as to what's next for David Marcus. So I'm going to throw that question straight to Naomi. If you want to riff on what's next for Mr. Marcus or some of these ideas that are included here, I think they're really interesting.
Yeah, I think the most interesting part of this tweet is actually the Bitcoin comment, and you alluded to why, Zach. I mean, David has been fighting the government ever since Facebook first announced that they were going to get involved with creating a cryptocurrency, and it wasn't even them that was creating it. They were sort of leading this project, but inviting all these other companies to participate, be node validators. It was going to be this essentially decentralized system, federated system, or however you want to call it, because a lot of people would look at the centralized companies and say like, oh, they're too big, this is not decentralized. I agree with that, but I also like the idea of what they were getting at, you know, not just Facebook being in control of something, but bringing in all of these other companies, Uber and Visa and whoever else was involved at the time. I'm still really sad that we didn't see that iteration because the initial vision for Libra was this basket of assets. It was this very novel concept where it wasn't just going to be pegged to the US dollar like stablecoins are. It was going to have all kinds of things. Maybe it'd have bonds in there. Maybe it'd have like S&P 500 shares. I mean, we don't know. They didn't actually get that far. The government kind of shut it down right at the start and said, you can't do this at all. And so it's really disappointing that we didn't get there. But I mean, David is a very interesting figure. I alluded to this on the show last week when we were talking about him. He is really early into Bitcoin, and people just think of him as this Facebook exec, and they're just like, oh, he got involved and he's just doing Facebook. Like, no, you read about him in early accounts of Bitcoin history, you'll learn about David Marcus. He was very early on this bandwagon and being into Bitcoin, and now he's kind of come full circle. I think he kind of saw that and he's like, yes, this is a great concept. Let's take this and run with it, and then we'll do even more things, and we'll have this basket of assets, and we'll have all of these different companies, and now he's kind of realizing what the ultimate promise of Bitcoin was it censorship resistance. There were no companies to pressure to stop their involvement. And so Bitcoin really keeps time and time again proving itself to be this kind of indestructible asset, this thing that's not going to go away because there's nowhere for governments to really target. I mean, David, I wish him all the best. He's really done a great job being a spokesperson for Libra when it first came out. If you go back to watch those hearings, oh my gosh, the facepalm moments. So all of the dumb questions he had to field, and he was so patient. He's really trying his best to be like, no, Libra is the asset. Calibra is our wallet. So yes, we can KYC that. This other thing, it's like this decentralized system. It's, you know, he's trying to explain this difference. These politicians aren't getting it. They're just screaming at him about like data and privacy and all of that. But it's worth watching some of the highlights from back in 2019. But I'm going to throw this to you, Will, for your thoughts.
Yeah, I loved a lot of the points that you brought up. And I think the one that probably has the biggest implications here is the fact that Bitcoin is going to continue being what it is. And he alludes to that in the tweet, saying that in the next 20 years, he expects Bitcoin to continue to be the dominant cryptocurrency. He says Ethereum might be number 2 for now, but there's up and comers. We've talked about that a lot here on the Hash because we've seen so many different up and comers. We've seen Luna, we've seen AVAX, we've seen Solana. The list keeps going on and on. But Bitcoin continues to be the number 1. And I think to Marcus's points here, it's like, why would Bitcoin be the number 1? And what implications does that have for the cryptocurrency industry if Bitcoin is going to continue to be the number 1? And I think lastly, will Bitcoin change? Doesn't look like Bitcoin's going to change much. In at least in Marcus's opinion, if Bitcoin's going to continue to be the number 1, it's probably because it's so conservative and so set in what it is. It's very hard for regulators to attack it. Can't change it much, and this is what it is. And I think Marcus's kind of tour through the regulator halls and through the tech halls and through his time building Calibra and Libra itself kind of demonstrates the value that he now sees in Bitcoin. I think that leads to like a lot of implications for how founders should look at the tokens and the projects they're working on right now, and maybe take a note from what Bitcoin is doing. Because if he's noting it from a guy from Facebook who had to march into Congress and sit before the hot seat, then I think founders who are just building out tokens right now should really be paying attention to his comments. Jen, I'll throw it to you.
You know who these tweets reminded me of? I read them and I thought, these seem like these would have been tweeted by Jack Dorsey. And I read a story this morning of Jack speaking at MicroStrategy's Bitcoin conference, and he commented on Diem. He said that Diem was a wasted effort and time. Facebook should have focused its efforts on making Bitcoin more accessible for everyone. And so I thought about this kind of similarities between David Marcus's journey and Jack Dorsey's journey. And Zach, to your question, I wonder if the two of them will team up in the future. I wonder if we're going to see them go down that rabbit hole together.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. I think the timing of those two things is really, really remarkable. Yeah, is this David Marcus to Square now Block? Is this David Marcus? I don't know. We don't know what to expect here. He said in November he was going to pursue his more entrepreneurial roots. Maybe he's in the process of spinning up a venture, but I think there's a lot of swirling questions. The shout out in these tweets to Solana also potentially interesting. He said Bitcoin's the top dog, Ethereum's there, and then Solana is nipping at Ethereum's heels. So maybe some clues as to where he could head. But I like, Jen, I like the Block pick. So, David Marcus to Block, I think is probably the odds-on favorite. Anyone have any thoughts here? Anyone predictions?
Interesting ideas.
Blind speculation. What do you think?
Blind speculation. Jack rejects David Marcus entirely because David dared to tweet about something other than Bitcoin. That's my prediction.
It's actually probably
a pretty good one. That's a good one.
I like that one.
If I was Marcus, I'd just retire. He's probably his early Bitcoiner. Hit the French Riviera, enjoy life. Don't get involved with Bitcoin Twitter anymore. Just peace out. That's what I would do.
Just like live a nice life.
Live a nice life.
All right, we'll change gears. We did notice that in the tweet that davidmarcus.eth with the Twitter Blue NFT verified image. So maybe not as big a maxi as Dorsey would like. But let's change gears. Sorry, Naomi, all yours.
Yeah, let's move on and talk about something that everyone needs to be aware of. So more malware out there that could potentially steal your crypto. This one actually targets crypto browser extensions, wallets, and 2FAs. Just be really, really careful with your money. Be really careful not clicking on random links. And it's just, it's difficult because new announcements like this come out all the time. This one, actually, it's called Mars Stealer. It's an improved copy of a different iteration, which came out around 2019, called the OSCI Stealer. And the idea is that it uses this custom grubber. It retrieves its configuration from the command and control infrastructure, and then it proceeds to target application data and popular, as I said, web browser extensions, wallets, 2FA. So when you're using these digital assets, I think the takeaway is just be really, really careful out there. And I would go even further. I am completely skeptical of all browser extension plugins. Like there are lots of cybersecurity experts who dig into that and just say, listen, fundamentally, this is pretty insecure, and you should be aware if you're using things in plugins that maybe it's passwords, maybe it's wallets or whatever, it may be more insecure than you realize. I think it was blockchain chick, so Heidi Chakos from Crypto Tips. She did this piece years ago, I think, when she was talking about MetaMask and like, maybe you shouldn't be using this, but just looking at the permissions that you give some of these things to actually log what you're doing on any page. Like, a lot of the time, these things are set to default, that it can just be reading everything you're writing in the browser. So just make sure that you are selecting, if you are going to go this route and use these browser plugins, make sure you're selecting that it's only able to read things when you're actually actively using it. Like, there are lots of things to be aware of with all this stuff. I'm going to throw this to the group. For general malware takes, is this something that you guys are worried about? Will, I'll throw it to you to start.
I'm actually really glad you brought this up, because I think this is something that most people don't know about. They're not going to find these headlines, but they matter a ton. I don't think anyone who's watching this show is probably going to be targeted by this. It's typically, these things are targeted against like specific individuals who are high net worth. But that doesn't mean that's not a good opportunity to learn about protecting your private keys. Naomi might disagree with me a little bit, but I think for the most part, like 95% of people are not going to be hit by something like this. But it is a really good opportunity to learn about how to protect your private keys, especially something like MetaMask, which most people have in their browser at this point who are involved in crypto. It's very easy to swipe those keys and steal your tokens. That's been the whole thing with this Bored Ape Yacht Club, this huge NFT community that continues to have their seed phrases stolen over and over again. And the simple reason why is because they share their seed phrase when they shouldn't. That's the number one rule in crypto. Don't share a seed phrase. Don't even share it with your mother. Don't share it with your dad. Doesn't matter. Don't share it. Go to the grave with that, as opposed to sharing it with anybody, unless you have some sort of protective scheme set up like CASA or a multi-sig, but we can get into that later. I think the importance of these stories is just teaching people about the basics of how to protect your wallets. And Naomi, I liked what you said. Use cold wallets, use offline storage, use something like that. An in-browser wallet, it's very susceptible to being swiped. And if you have a lot of money on there, you're going to have a bad day at some point. Something's going to happen. It's going to be swiped. It might not be this Mars stealer, but there's going to be something out there that's going to steal your coins. But you might disagree with me on the susceptibility. So I actually want to hear that, because that might be a different threat model than I would kind of assume this would be towards.
Yeah, and to be specific, I think that browser plugins are far more insecure than, say, like a hot wallet on a website. Just by their inherent nature, there's a lot of stuff that's transmitted in the clear that people don't realize. Like, it can get pretty murky when it comes to security, and it's probably not as secure as you may presume, given that it's like everywhere in the crypto world. Everyone's using these things. But I will say that I don't think it's just individuals that are being targeted; it's websites that are being targeted. So if you frequent certain websites, and you click on a malicious link, then you're susceptible to something like this. So just be really careful if you're going to different crypto sites, things that you might not ordinarily access. I mean, even MetaMask, there are all these clone websites out there that look exactly the same. You would have such a hard time figuring out whether, which one was the original. Just look really carefully at that URL and just make sure that if there are any pop-ups, and even if it's like, hey, do you want to do this thing? Like, just be careful what you're clicking. Sometimes they make a button that actually is a download button, like look like an X, so you think you're closing or whatever. Just be really careful with these things. If you get strange things happening on your computer, and there are lots of websites out there that will give you extensive tips on how to, navigate these waters and what to do in certain examples. Probably too much to go into in this show, but I think, Will, you gave some great tips there. Storing your crypto offline is an immediate, really good step that you can take there. But Jen, I'll throw it to you. What are your thoughts on all this?
You kind of answered my questions. I was going to say, there are so many barriers for people who are getting into crypto, and then looking at the access that people may have when you're using an extension wallet, and looking at the privacies that you were mentioning in your intro just adds to those barriers. And I can completely understand how people may not understand the accesses that people have. And so we have don't click on links that you don't know. Don't store money in your browser extension wallet, or don't store a lot of money in your browser extension wallet, more than you want to use in maybe one certain instance. I was going to ask you, Naomi, what are some other tips that, newbies should keep in mind when they're entering the space? But you've kind of answered it, and maybe you can direct people to a source of information where it's easily accessible and easily digestible.
Well, I think CoinDesk just celebrated Privacy Week last week. So some great content was put out about security and prepping yourself. So check through all of that. But I do want to go through something else to do with this specific malware exploit. So apparently, this malicious software checks the user, checks their ID settings, and if that device's language ID matches Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, or Uzbekistan, then the program will exit without performing any malicious behavior. So they've isolated these specific countries and said, we're not going to steal any crypto from you. I thought that was really interesting. Like, are they the countries that their founders are all from? It's just very, very interesting.
Criminals with morals.
Patriotic malware.
Yeah,
Noble
patriotic
scammers.
malware. Kind of interesting there. But Zach, I'll throw it to you to wrap us up. Take us to break.
All right, I will take us to break. And then when we come back from break, we're going to talk about Coachella NFTs, access, event perks, NFTs that do stuff from the Coachella Music Festival in the desert of California. All right, we'll talk about that after the break. It's The Hash. Thanks for being with us. See you soon. Okay? Okay.
Hello and welcome back to The Hash. We were on break and now we are not anymore. We are heading off to Coachella. They are launching Solana NFTs as a part of a deal with FTX. So the music festival is returning after a 2-year hiatus, of course, because of COVID, with NFTs that offer perks and VIP access as part of a long-term partnership with the crypto exchange. So I don't know if you guys remember, but Solana was also the official blockchain partner of Lollapalooza. And there were some pretty interesting NFTs that came out of that. I believe Lollapalooza launched their own NFT marketplace as a part of that. But Naomi, I'm going to kick this down to you. There are some cool VIP perks associated with these NFTs. Do you think Coachella goers want these? Are they going to participate in this NFT launch with FTX?
I think that it's really cool that Coachella in general is getting involved with this. I mean, such a giant name brand. And it's just like, I mean, I do feel like we talk about this on the show all the time. Another big brand coming in and, oh, that's really exciting because they're embracing it. But Coachella is huge, And what if, they just started releasing all of this music from different artists as NFTs? Like, there are all kinds of ways that directions that this could go. So it looks pretty interesting. I have never been to Coachella. Definitely something that I would love to check out one year. But I wonder whether this would even incentivize people to go if they could get like this collectible. It's not just about the experience anymore. You can have these things that you could take home with you. Like, just adding in those perks is an interesting direction to go in. But Zach, I'll throw it to you for your thoughts.
The music industry is like going really hard in NFTs right now. We saw Warner Music Group do something with NFTs. We saw John Legend today announce that he's doing an NFT platform. Everyone is racing to get a slice of this pie. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. If it sort of aggregates around individual artists partnering with bigger brands to do this thing, or if it aggregates around record labels partnering to make these platforms work. And I think what we're seeing with this Coachella offering is quite interesting in that it's through FTX US, which is clearly a big presence. They did this Solana NFT marketplace not long ago. It wasn't really that big of a hit in terms of getting people to use it, but it's definitely something that is baked into this thing that is growing in stature and awareness over time. So if this is the thing that ultimately serves the Coachella music fan, as well as it does the FTX US marketplace for these NFTs, as well as it serves Solana NFTs writ large, I think that's potentially quite interesting. And it's going to be interesting to see what other music festivals follow suit. Jen, you mentioned Lollapalooza. Governor's Ball has done something like this. This could become, just like, your digital souvenir that you can have access to and do with what you please. So interesting to see this roll out. Everyone's doing it, even Coachella. All right, Will,
Even
down
Coachella.
to you.
I want to take a look back memory lane. I think we've been on the Hash for almost a year now. And I remember going back in the time box and thinking like NFTs, those are not going to be a big thing. And like in February of last year, talking about NBA Top Shot, now we're talking about them at Coachella. They're like very mainstream. Everyone is launching an NFT. It's just so weird to see what the difference a year makes for something like NFTs here. I thought they were dead. There was like one pump in like March. They got really, really big the beginning of last year. And they kind of died down a little bit when crypto prices went down. Then they like resurged in August, and they've kind of been hot since. Like there's been a little bit of a drawdown with the price correction, but they're still going pretty strong. And integration with Coachella here doesn't seem to indicate that this is going away at any point in the future. Naomi, I'll throw it back up to you.
Yeah, just some final quick thoughts. I'm just wondering how things like NFTs, which seem so disassociated from traditional crypto and all of the trading and speculation, I wonder how this affects the movement of the market as well. Because we're currently in a bear market, and yet we're still having announcements from places like Coachella saying NFTs, right? And then I presume this has been in the works for a long time. These giant organizations, there's a lot of bureaucracy, and so they're kind of lagging in getting this announcements out. They probably decided this a long time ago when crypto was still looking on the up and up. And now they're finally announcing it, but crypto's going down. And so I wonder whether something like this is an impetus that will kind of lift the market back up, because you have these lagging companies come in, and then it kind of messes up that flow of the crypto market. Or I wonder whether we're starting to see these divergent markets where it doesn't matter what traditional crypto markets are doing. NFTs are its own thing at this stage. It may be based on blockchain technology, but people are into it not because of the price or whatever. They're into it for other reasons. The application for transfer of ownership, for cool little goodie bags, for keepsakes. Like, it just seems like it's potential. We've created this kind of spin-off area that isn't really that affected by price. And Will, you mentioned this on a previous show. The NFT markets haven't really seemed to have taken a hit. They're still going as strong as ever. So it's just interesting to see that that phenomenon kind of emerge.
I wanted to just add a few more tidbits to this as I lose my voice. Sorry. Okay. So the collectibles are not only Coachella collectibles. There are going to be 10 NFTs that will give the holder lifetime access to Coachella and VIP events. And so I have a quote here to read from the Coachella Innovation Lead. They said, "Only blockchain technology can give us the unique ability to offer tradable lifetime passes to Coachella for the first time." So I thought that was really interesting that they're thinking about these tradable these tradable tickets, essentially. And I think there are other ways to do it that don't use blockchain technology, but it's interesting to see them integrating the technology into what they're doing. And my second thought is, we spoke about FTX really kind of dominating their marketing when it comes to sports, and then focusing on regulation moving forward on a show, I think it was a few days ago. And I wonder if FTX has focused their marketing now on the entertainment space. I wonder if they see the value in music NFTs and they're ready to compete in that space. And I wonder how they're thinking about regulation. I mean, we saw in India, the government's looking to define NFTs as it pertains to regulation. And so I wonder what role FTX will play in NFTs in that mind in the US. But Zach, I'll kick it up to you.
Yeah, I wonder if it will be sort of a mainstreaming force. I think the interesting thing at the very end of this article was that FTX US bought carbon credits to offset potential backlash, because we've seen that time and time again, be it with gamers or other mainstream communities on the internet. There's a ton of backlash still to NFTs, mainly around their perceived environmental costs, because many of them are on Ethereum, which is a proof of work chain, which is more environmentally costly than something like Solana or other proof of stake networks. So anyway, I think that's interesting in speaking to that sort of mainstreaming moment, that there is sort of like a bit of headwind when it comes to rolling out NFTs in every part of popular culture. So going to be interesting to see what comes of it. But all right, I'm going to toss it to Will, who I think has our last story of the day. Will?
I do. Story number 4 is about MicroStrategy taking a $147 million impairment charge on their Bitcoin holdings from Q4. So let's roll out the definition for impairment here. Got Investopedia up here on a tab, so everyone can learn some accounting along with me. Woo-hoo. In accounting, impairment is a permanent reduction in the value of a company asset. It may be a fixed asset or an intangible asset. Basically, if you have an asset and the value of that asset goes down in a certain period, then you can take an impairment on it, kind of reduce the tax burden of that asset in the long run. Naomi might have a little bit more color on what that means, but I'm not a tax guy, so I won't claim to know it. The point here is that MicroStrategy has bought a lot of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin has gone down in the short term. Right now, I don't think they're underwater by any means. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but my understanding is that for most of the purchases, they are well above the price point of Bitcoin to the cost basis of purchasing those Bitcoins. And if you look at their stock itself, it's done incredibly well over the 2-year span that they've been investing in Bitcoin, or about a year and a half they've been investing in Bitcoin. And Zach, I even want to get some color. I saw you tweeting yesterday about how MicroStrategy has found this nice little, I don't know, like golden circle of buying Bitcoin, getting engagement on Twitter, increasing the stock price, and then doing it all over again. But I want to give it to Naomi first. Maybe you can give us like a little bit more understanding what this headline means.
Yeah, so these impairment reporting requirements, it's not really like a benefit to these companies because, as Will mentioned, they only adjusted downwards, they're not adjusted upwards. So if you buy something, it's on your books. If the value goes down, you have to adjust and say that this value has gone down. But if the value goes up, you don't adjust it back up again. And this is actually a particularly interesting story, what happened to MicroStrategy. And it really highlights why I hate the SEC so much, is that MicroStrategy, they wrote, Bitcoin went down in price this amount, therefore the impairment amount is X amount. But then they wrote this footnote, my understanding from what I hear, that said, okay, so this is the impairment amount that we have to report, just so you know the actual value on our books is X gazillion dollars. And so then the SEC went after them for adding a footnote, because they, heaven forbid, they should give their investors more information rather than less. So this is an organization, the SEC, that is meant to be about transparency, making sure consumers have all the right information, but they didn't actually want them to clarify what was actually on their books. They just wanted to leave it at the impairment amount. It's just a ridiculous situation, and it's bad when you have a volatile asset like crypto. If it goes down at any point, during the quarter, then you have to report like the lowest price. It all gets adjusted downwards, so it makes it look like your books are, completely underwater. And as you said yourself, oh my gosh, I have a call coming through. That's very awkward. I hope you guys didn't hear that call. I would say it's bad because people were. Hi, do you want to join in on the hash? We're having a bit of a conversation about the SEC. Sorry, that was the SEC. I just shut them down. I was like, listen, I'm sorry, guys, I don't have time right now. I know Gary. I said some things. You want to provide Gary's like, now shut it down. We don't want you on there. We don't want you. But yeah, even you said, Will, it's unclear. You're like, I don't know whether they're underwater or not. It's like, I think we'd have a better idea if they were actually allowed to report what the actual value of their books were, even if it's just in footnotes. But no, the SEC doesn't even want that. So this is a particularly egregious, ridiculous situation that shows what the SEC is really about. And it's not about giving consumers information. It's not about protecting consumers. But I will throw this to the group, Zach, for your thoughts.
All right, I'll go back to what Will was saying. There is a silver lining in all of this, and MicroStrategy is having this event this week. And in one of the slides in their event, they showed this little feedback loop, this virtuous Bitcoin and business activity flywheel where market attention, facilitated by these big old whopping Bitcoin buys, leads to pipeline and sales growth, leads to increased operating revenue, leads to investment in Bitcoin and superior technology. So even if this is a volatile asset that is inflicting some impairment charges, Michael Saylor may still be laughing all the way to his bank, which is filled with actual Bitcoins that he dives into like Scrooge McDuck every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. This is a known fact. I don't know if you guys know that, but just saying. So anyway, so even though this is an impairment, there is a silver lining. We're talking about it. It's helping him. Remember when MicroStrategy wasn't a thing? It was just a business intelligence firm. It was just a business. Northern Virginia. Remember that? Remember when they weren't? Nobody knew about it. Yeah. That was.
Did anyone watch the Up Only episode with him?
I didn't. I need to check that out though. Was it good?
You should check it out. It was very good. That's good. It was a fun side to the Michael Saylor we all know and love. It's a different side. So check it out for sure. A little plug for Up Only. Unfortunately, they're not CoinDesk. Maybe you guys should buy them. Should buy Up Only.
It's okay. We can plug Kobe. Good work, Kobe. We'll check that out. Go everybody watch that. Tell me how it was. I'm gonna go check it out too. All right. That's it for the hash today. We're on CoinDesk TV. I'm Zach Seward. That's Will Foxley, Jensen Assey, Naomi Brockwell. hopefully we talked about some interesting crypto stuff today. And we're going to do it again tomorrow. And I hope it's good then too. All right. Thanks for all your attention and being here with us, especially in the chat. Shout out the chat. Free gen movement. Free gen movement. Love that.
If I get
movement. We
t-shirts,
stand with the free gen
will you
movement.
guys wear them?
Yes, we will.
I need
We will
to hear this.
100% wear
I
them.
started a free gen DAO.
That's true. That's true. Maybe hats, maybe like baseball hats or something like that. Anyway, we'll hash it out. We'll hash out the details. All right, cool. All right, thanks for watching us today. We'll be back tomorrow. Yep. See you.
Bye.
Bye.